Well, good evening and good afternoon, depending on which time zone you're in the USA. And it's a super Saturday morning if you're in the Pacific Rim or overseas. So thank you for joining us. I am Bruce, aka the guy in the blue shirt, or Mr. Simpler, Faster, Better. And I'm also the proud brand ambassador for a company called 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗱𝗚. And if you want to learn more about 𝗟𝗱𝗱𝗱 and how they activate the power of their frontline teams, you can ask me, or you can go to 𝗟𝗲𝗱𝗱𝗱𝗚.com. Mr. Thane Isaacs over there in beautiful Vermont. It's already dark, right? So why don't you say hi and little intro about yourself, and we'll get going on leading the leaders building leaders, right?
Right, Bruce. Wow, thank you again for having me on. I mean, this is my second LinkedIn Live with you, and I really appreciate you having me back on. Yes, it is getting dark here in Vermont. It's chilly outside, but it's been very, very crisp, very beautiful blue skies. The snow's starting to melt, and I couldn't ask for better weather right now.
Yeah, I know. I was intrigued by your snow melt videos because, as you know, you and I have been back and forth on the wisdom from the woods several times, and I know you think it's a little hokey, but I think it's a little cool. So anyway, so what's happening in the stream fields or the stream yards, as you were recently showing on video last week?
Well, the snow's even further gone, but the water's built up, and the beautiful thing about all the snow we have is it sends a lot of water down south, so it
Mm-hmm.
helps to keep from people having droughts, and it just gives me that idea of how everything is so symbiotic, how we're all so connected, how
Yeah.
what people do up here affects people down there, how the weather up here affects people down there. So it's a great reminder of that, how we're all connected. So that's one of the things I love being out in nature. And I believe me, I've never thought that wisdom was from the woods was hokey. I just didn't think anybody would think it was special enough to give a title to. But as you asked me to do, you actually came up with the title and said you need to title it. And it's had a great following, and people love it. And when I don't do it, people miss it. So I've
Yeah.
definitely tried to do it more often. This year's been tough because the snow has been very deep, and it's just definitely a lot harder to get out into the woods and do things because you don't know when you're going to hit a low spot and can go down in
Right.
between a couple of rocks. So I've tried to be a little more careful this year, but I definitely am trying to get out and do some more videos as well.
All right. Well, I know you also try and do that on Wednesdays so that you make it Wonderful Wednesday as well as Wisdom from the Woods. So I'm going to say hi to some regulars of ours. Mr. Chris Rangel, Gracie Ruth Melendez are in the house. And thank you for joining us. And you guys have seen our lives enough to know that we might ask you to drop some commentary in the comments. And Thane and I will go back and respond later. And if there's somebody new joining, just say hello and feel free to network with each other and let us know where you're joining from. So at least tonight I can see the comments. My last live, for some reason, I couldn't tell who was commenting with who. So it's talk about, leaders, building leaders. It's a great thing when you have to always operate on the fly doing stuff live, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's kind of like this. I can remember quite a while back we did something like this. It wasn't quite LinkedIn Live, but where you were interviewing me for a session, and I
Mm-hmm.
just think of how far we've come since then. The things that you and I were willing to try back then that we felt so uncomfortable with that now we've done so many times we feel a lot more comfortable with. And I have to thank you for that, because you actually had a lot of leadership in my life on that to say, no thing, we've got to do this. I'm going to push you. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And now I do it 3 to 5 times a day sometimes. So it's good
Mm-hmm.
that you did, and it's stretched me, and it's helped me help a lot of other people. So I have to say thank you to you in front of everybody for pushing me to that level.
Well, it's a symbiotic thing because even though I might seem super confident, sometimes I actually don't really know what I'm doing. so, so I kind of wing it a lot more, and that's actually a quality around. I think last year for me, if I had to think about what did I do in terms of leaders building other leaders, and I thank you for the compliment, it's really about, you know, looking at what's the adoption of new or different things we have to do. So the adoption is the recognition, I think it is. And then the hardest piece is, how do you personally adapt to what you're seeing, right? And I know that you and I have had lots of conversations about this. Oh man, I wish we didn't have to adapt so quickly and do so many new things, right? But that's the way of the world today, right?
Right, right. And it's not for us to be able to control, it's for us to be able to respond instead of reacting. And it's for us to not give up so much resistance and give power to those things, but to try to work within harmony of them, and try to, if we have to, work around them, but definitely not try to fight them, because anytime we fight something like that, we really give more power to it. So it's really important for us to accept that it's there, but also accept that we don't have to accept it. You know, it's one of the things we talked about in our mastermind last night, was all the resistance that, you know, we may have that we're not aware of. And even though we may feel like our life is working very well, if we have that resistance in one area of our life, it's affecting all the other areas of our lives. And that's one of the things that we also have to be aware of, that self-awareness of how those things affect us.
Yeah, and for me, it's actually also being less rigid, you know, and actually being more plastic, more flowable. So personally, that's why I love the videos that you do when you're walking the stream, because, you know, you can't hold good water from flowing in the right direction it wants to flow in. So, you know, going and blowing and flowing is always the best that we can all do. And I think you feel the same way. I feel my best fluid leadership when I can go with the flow and not feel contained or restrained. So
yeah, that's that discussion we've had about, you know, when people say think outside of the box, and we say don't even have a box.
right.
Why would you even have a box? And you know what doesn't have a box is the flowing river. It
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
doesn't. It won't. It's, you know, I mean, and water is such a great thing to think about as far as how we are in our lives. Water is one of the things that actually changes. It changes from that fluid to a
Yeah.
solid, back to a fluid, back to a solid, back to, and it can do it time and time again, and it really doesn't affect it like it does some products, do some elements to do that. So water is something we, as Bruce Lee said, we need to be like the water, and to fill the space and not try to have the space fill us.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's very key, and that's again why I love to be in nature so much. It helps me have a better perspective on life, and to realize that everything we're dealing with, there are answers out there that we can find if we pay attention.
Yeah, well, I had a funny visual there. Number one, thank you for the name recognition with Bruce Lee. I used to love watching him as a kid. But the other thing I think with flow, and particularly with water, is it will change to gas, right, or steam, and then it can also reconstitute or reappear again, either as water, or and then it can freeze again. So there's all those different states of and to me, that's what you've got to be as a leader, particularly when you're helping build other leaders. You've got to be super flexible, super transformative, and you got to be able to go from the water to the solid to the gas in, you know, or the steam in a pretty short order sometimes. So
Well, I'll share something with you I don't share with a lot of people, and anyone listening can hear it. My mantra when I meditate is actually that as I start as a snowflake and I turn into water, and I then eventually evaporate into the air, and I become that snowflake again, and I turn into, that's my mantra when I'm actually meditating. So it's kind of funny you bring that up. I don't really share that a lot, but that is one of the things I think about, and it helps me to understand that whole power that we need to be able to transition, need to be able to adapt, and we need to be able to understand that really a lot of that is not as much in our control as we think it is. It's the things that happen around us and how we're able to respond to those. But we can't always control the things that are coming at us. But we
right.
can how we are able to. Am I going to melt right now? Am I going to freeze up? Am I going to move? And all that. So I think it's very important to be like the water.
Well, you know, I said to you in the warm-up thing that I always learn something in every LinkedIn live, and I also forgot to tell you, I also get goosebumps about one thing at least the guest says, and I just got the goosebumps, so the hairs are gone up on my arm again. And
Well,
so thank you for that. And no, it's a great reminder that we are such a small piece of the overall process. And it's like you and I have talked about before, that the hardest thing is to be the best situational leader in every situation, right? And that's what it comes down to. So I love that. So if Gracie's still listening in, maybe she could write down, you want to go over that again? It was the snowflake. Yeah, go over the sequence again.
yeah, yeah. I
Cool.
start as I'll go in a little more detail. I'm the snowflake that falls to the soft billowy earth with millions upon billions of my kind. And I wait. I won't go into the whole thing because we won't have that much time. I wait and I wait and I wait until I warm to become moisture, and I fall from the leaf of the tree I'm sitting on. I imagine myself sitting on a tree. I fall to the ground. I triculate myself through the soil, but I also run across the soil back to a river. But I also evaporate into to the air, so that I return back to the heavens again, and then I start back again to a snowflake, back into the moisture that evaporates into the air. And I'd go through that process several times while I'm meditating.
Right. So that's a great metaphor. I love the articulate. It's kind of the circle of life, right? I always remember the Lion King, and they show the circle of life. Well, good leaders or not so good leaders, but they end up building other leaders. That's kind of the same full circle, right?
Right. And to move through the soil, part of that is to give back to the earth, because when you're moving through the soil, plants pick up part of the moisture to have their life cycle. So when you're in my head, what I'm doing is I'm trying to touch as many of the points of life as possible, so I realize how connected I am, and that everything I do has more than the effect that I see before me. And when we realize that what you do has more than the effect that you see before you, there's so much more, then we can become so much more aware of what our action should be than what we should, just to get a self reward or the immediate effect of what we're doing. I think that's key.
I'm going to show you something. Look at this. This is my word for this year.
Catalyst. Yep.
Catalyst. And what you just described was the basic definition of a chemical catalyst. So good job, man. And
thank you.
So I've not shared that with you before. I've shown it to a couple of other people on LinkedIn Live, but it's I always find it really fascinating, particularly when, like you said, when we look back a year or so, and if you look at our original collaborative group and now look at how far everybody's come, and, Chris and Gracie and Jill Valdez, Connie Medina, Donna, Michael Ryan,
Brittany.
We were all parts of that. So, the sum of the parts has become greater than the whole, for sure, in terms of that original collaborative around leadership that we had going on for a while. So
definitely, and some of that again were maverick moves on your part to try to get us to do things, and it was great to see as people grew that it's like, hey, I'm gonna have to step away because I'm so busy doing what I'm trying to do, and that is great that we had those stepping stones. But I look at that as part of something like a mastermind group like we do, where we get together and we talk about things. Again, like I said, last night was resistance, and it was so funny because we have some friends staying here from Atlanta, and one of our friends stayed home today while they all went out. She journaled, and she was telling me about her journal, and it was all about resistance. And when I told her about our session last night, she's like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd been there. It's like, this is just weird how this is all tied together. And I think that's all that whole power of attraction, and that whole thought to energy process happens if we tune into it.
Right. So talk about leaders building leaders. This is my little blue book. It's actually blue, and Connie gave me this, and I didn't know what to do with it. So what I've been doing for the first time in a long time is I'm journaling my accomplishments every week, because if we don't write them, well, I don't have that good of a memory. If we don't write them down at the time. So I would encourage, if you're a leader, maybe with a little less experience, I would encourage you, whether it's on a smartphone, if you're a little younger and you prefer to, or you just love to do notes on a smartphone, or if you're a little bit sundowning in their career like me, I like to write in a notebook. And you can see, you know, I called it my simpler, faster, better accomplishments log. So, so it's a great example and a great measure to me of how much, you know, how do you measure a meaningful connection? And that's how you do, right? When I can feel comfortable sharing something that I would have thought is private before. And,
right.
And what I find is that helps people to be less conscious or less shy when they have some issues that they may not want to talk about. So leaders building leaders is often about, you know, the power of being able to tune in and listen to, you know, kind of their heartbeat, as it were, right?
Yeah, it's to listen to understand, not to listen to answer.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we want to do. But, you know, with leaders building leaders, what I believe that we all have to start with is in the home. If our home's not in order, if the relationships with the people that are closest to us aren't in order, it's tough to have anything else in order. I think we have to start with that first. Then I think we have to work into the community and the workplace. And without even realizing it, if we can do those three things, if we can fasten those three places with leadership and good supportive people, it will go out into the world. And that's what I'm talking about the effect of what you're doing has more than just what you see before your eyes. And if you're able to affect the people in your home, you're able to affect the people in your community and your workplace, you are able to affect the world. And I've seen it through my own children. I've seen what they've been able to do. And don't get me wrong, our house isn't the best house in order. We have, you know, major problems as a family, but my children have done great things with their lives and have spread it around the world, you know, so that I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had a lot of probably tough conversations with some people recently about, hey, if you're not the product to your own process, then you really need to take a step back and ask yourself, you know, how number one, is somebody else really going to trust me? Number two, how can I really demonstrate value if I'm not willing to do it myself? And I know you love to help people understand it's about demonstrated value, not, you know, all the glitz and glam, as it were. And and I've had a few conversations with people recently about they've got so excited, they've got out of their own process and they've lost sight of what the product of their process is. And so yeah, those aren't such an easy set of conversations to have, but for me, totally necessary, because I'm constantly trying to be the product to my own process. And so,
yeah, I heard John Maxwell put it as people who they're doing great while they jump in the air, but when they hit the ground, what are they doing? You know, as long as they're jumping in the air, everything's great. But once they hit the ground, what are they doing? You know, we could all have that celebration and that, you know, woohoo, woohoo, but it's that journey that we're walking every day, and how are we doing it? Are we making that progress?
right.
So I completely understand what you're saying, but at the same time, you do what you can, but you're never going to argue someone to the point of changing their mind. I've never done it in my life, got into an argument with somebody where they said all of a sudden, it's like, oh, you yelled at me enough that I understand now, I was wrong. It's, you know, it's usually all they hear is the yelling, and they don't hear the point you're trying to make when we start getting to those kind of arguments. So I've tried to, again, that's that resistance we've talked about earlier. I've tried to let that go. It's like, I can, you know, I can try to say a few things to you, but I'm not gonna do it to the point of hurting myself or hurting our relationship. I would rather be okay with you and just know that that's how you feel and this is how I feel.
Yeah, it's always okay to agree to disagree and respect each other's position, right?
Right. Hey, Bruce,
Yeah.
I've heard something about.
Hang on a minute, Ronald. I'm sorry. I said I might cut you off.
Yep.
Yeah, Ronald Henderson's just hopped on. So, hey, Ronald, he's a mutual connection. So thanks for joining us.
Ronald Henderson. Do I know Ronald Henderson? Do I know him? Let's see, Ronald. So no, real quick, Bruce, I'd heard something about a new LinkedIn local that you and Gracie are working on.
Yeah. Well, how about that? I guess a little birdie must have told you, right?
Well, you know, I stay in touch with a lot of people, including Ronald Henderson. I even stay in touch with that man.
Yeah, you do a great job of staying in touch with, you know, the force, the guys that flow with force, and Ronald is one of those guys. So it's good to see all you do, Ronald, and Gracie, Chris, and again, all the meaningful connections. But yes, thank you, Thane, for asking about Gracie, Ruth, and I. We met, a little history. We met at a LinkedIn local in person, and then back in last February and March, we span off and created our own LinkedIn local groups, hers in Pasadena and mine in Santa Clarita, Canyon Country, which is where I live. And literally 10 days or so after our last meetings, we got locked down here in California. So we kind of stood back a little bit, which probably was not the best thing to do. And then come summertime or so last year, Gracie, Ruth, and I said, you know what, we need to see if we can at least extend the spirit of LinkedIn Locals. And the spirit of LinkedIn Locals, it's all about, can we learn, can we prosper, and can we grow? And prospering is not just about the money. So anyway, fast forward to last fall, Gracie, Ruth, and I, and Gracie figured out all the mechanics, not me. She's really good with the digital media stuff. And we actually started doing LinkedIn Locals virtually. So we learned a lot of things along the way last fall. And then over the December, January period of this year, Gracie, Ruth, and I said, you know what do we need to do to help people really understand how can you use LinkedIn or networking off of LinkedIn as and when you can to really learn, prosper, and grow? And what we realized is that we had made some basic assumptions that we knew, or we thought we knew, that everyone knew how to network, and that was not true. So in January, we covered the first step in networking, which is to show up, whether it's virtually, digitally, in person, you know, as a hybrid of all of those things, but you got to show up. And we had a great speaker, Stephen Lowe, who's up in North California. And then in February, we covered the next stage, which is after you show up, you got to engage somehow. I don't mean engage to get married or anything, but engage in some type of activity. And that some type of activity is going to be in conversations, in, like you said, you know, leaders building other leaders, helping out. I'm sorry, I've got a pop up there. And then this month, we're going to finish our trilogy of LinkedIn Local Virtuals, and we're going to do the real big cherry on the cake, which is follow up and follow through. So what we have observed, interesting enough, is that people are kind of okay about show up, and people are really okay about engagement, but they're not really good at follow up and follow through. So that's what we're covering next week on March 25th. Long story, but I wanted to give it some contextual understanding that, you know, it's a 3-part series, and we would love anyone to come join us that is unsure or might want some new tips about following up and following through. And I know it's a subject that you're passionate about as well, Thane. So
yeah, not following through, it just reminds me of, if you're in a conversation and someone's, you know, you say to someone, hey, how are you doing? And they say, I'm fine, how are you? And you walk away and you never respond. You just, you know, it's kind of like that. It's like, what? Oh, okay. So yeah, following through, you know, that's part of that whole relationship. You know, and that's what networking is all about, is to start building those relationships, getting people to know they can rely on you. They can count on you, that you'll be there. But if you don't even ever follow up, how do they know you're going to ever be there for them? How do they know they can rely on you? And you're trying to start a business relationship. You're trying to start a, you know, mutual relationship. And so it always baffles me how that happens. It's like the salesperson who hears no and they never do another follow-up. You know, it's like, well, they could change their mind, that, you know, they haven't gotten to know you yet. They don't know enough about your product. No is not a permanent answer unless you let
No.
it be, so.
Well, it could be no, not now. And the other tag back to leaders building leaders is that it's based upon some fundamental principles, right? And the one I always remember is my word is my bond, right? If you say you're going to do something, then do it. Or if you can't do
Amen.
it, at least go back to the person and say, hey, something changed here, or, I'm off on my timeline. Is it, and renegotiate, even if it's renegotiating, not doing what you committed to, but at least do the word is my bond thing.
Well, and that's my word of the year right there. Respect. It's just respect for people, to treat people the way you would want to be treated. You wouldn't want to be left hanging. You wouldn't want to be left without an answer. So I completely agree that that's it. And to me, one of the biggest values of leaders building leaders, Bruce, is seeing the value in people. Is when you start to show people you care enough to help equip them, to help develop them, to help them have a better life, they start to care more about themselves. And then when you can get them to actually start doing that for other people, then they see the significance in their life and what they can do to help change the world. And again, that's more than the effect of what you see of what you're doing right before your eyes.
Yeah, it's the sum of the parts is, greater than the multiplication of the additive, right? Or something like that. I don't know what the full scientific theory is, but that's what it's all about, or the butterfly effect. Some people call it the butterfly effect. And either way, they're powerful lessons to remember that, you can create a little bit of momentum here. And if you lead that and build it into other leaders who then do that knowledge transfer or transfer the energy, then that can build into something magnificent along the way. So
yes, to me, it's all about equipping people so they can equip people, so they can equip people, and so on and so on. And if we all look at what we have that way, that it's there to share with others, it's not there to hoard for ourselves. It's kind of like power. When we give power freely to others to use it and wield it, we get more creative with the power. When we hoard the power, it becomes a drug and it consumes us. So we have to share. We have to share all of this.
Yeah, and it's that reminds me of, you limit your bandwidth if you hang on to everything that you know, right? So if you don't at least do a one-to-many, sharing as many things as you can individually to as many other people, then you're never going to expand your bandwidth, and as a result, you'll compress the amount that you can grow as an individual. So give it away before you expect anything in return, right?
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Is give before you receive, sacrifice before award, no pain, no gain. It's all of those things, and when we understand that better, we receive so much more. And again, that's that resistance to, well, I don't have enough, so I'm going to take more, and eventually that will burn you out. That will catch up to you. It's not sustainable in anyone's life.
Well, you can't take 3 kilos out of a 1 kilo jar, right? It don't work that way.
No, it doesn't. That kind of reminds me of daylight savings times, where I wish they'd pass the law to ban that whole nightmare in our lives. It's like, get your body rhythm off and everything. And I heard of a Native American saying one time that only the white man thinks that you can take 12 inches off the top of a blanket and sew it to the bottom of the blanket and make the blanket longer. It doesn't make any sense to me. So anyway, that's what when you said that, that's just what that reminds me of. And I know they've talked about passing a law to get rid of it. It's just, it's archaic. So.
Well, for those of us that have, more than USA country connections, I'm still thrown because I just got used to all the time shifts with my connections in the Pacific Rim and Europe and everything. And now, of course, they haven't sprung forward and we have, and I'm totally confused again. And so it's like, here we go again. And so, but yeah, so it's a lot of churn for, the concept was good back in the day, but I think the concept has gone by and we need to talk about, adopting and adapting to something new, right?
Totally, 100%, 100%. And that's the key to everything in life, right? Adapting to what is needed now and what's not needed now. What is, what is insane in life and what is sane in life, and what is sane today may be insane tomorrow, and
Yeah.
vice versa. But adaptability to me is the key to everything. What we've learned more through the whole COVID process,
Oh my
through
God.
what
Yeah.
we've dealt with, is if you can't adapt, then you're probably going insane.
Hmm.
And if you could adapt, then you're probably very sane. And people, you know, I have never understood the insanity that's happened through COVID to some people, being locked down. I mean, yeah, I had more freedom than a lot of people, but I wasn't able to travel across state lines or anything like that. But it's like I just embraced everything we had and tried to make the most of it.
Yep. You got to do what you got to do. And I'm in a county of between 14 to 16 million people, depending on how you measure the county boundaries. And yeah, it's been a lot tougher than a lot of other communities for us here in Southern California. So it's not all rosy as it seems from the commercials about SoCal. It's
Well, we have less than 1 million people in our state.
yeah, how about that? So we could fit.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, but we have had a lot of tourists come, and a lot of people have been moving here, but from the outer
Yeah, I hear.
state. And that's one of those things that I've been resisting pretty hard, and I just need to learn that it's like nothing I resist about it's going to make it change. And that's one of the things that's probably affected my life a little bit recently. And since I've given into it and accepted that that's what it is, and I'm letting a lot of that resistance go, other things in my life have a lot more harmony in them. And that's where I know this from. That's why we talked about it last night in our mastermind, because it was something I'd experienced, so I wanted to share it with other people.
Hmm.
And how, even though that wasn't a part of these other parts of my life, it was still affecting the other parts of my life.
Right. Well, great segue. Yes. So I want to do a call out or shout out to you that if you're watching this either live or as a replay, I will put it in the certain spots. So if you're seeing this as a replay and you have a comment or a question for Thane on Leaders Building Leaders, just put the hashtag replay in front of your question or comment. And then we know that it's happened after the live stream. It just helps us a little bit. So if you like the way that Thane thinks about leadership, he's got a truckload of experience to pass along to people. And then on my side, if you want to think about making your life simpler, faster, better, it is more of a thought process as well as a set of activities. So if you want to remove or eliminate massive amounts of wasted process steps, time, and money, then the guy in the blue shirt is for you. So how do people get hold of you, Thane?
They can give me a call on my phone. I love to talk to people, 802-770-4061. They can give me an email drop at innovations.tomorrow@gmail.com. They can get a hold of me right here on LinkedIn. Leave me a message in my direct mailbox. Reach out to connect. I usually accept most connection requests, and I love to talk to you.
Right. And I think if you are saying this again, either live or as a replay, it would be super helpful if you just tell Thane, hey, I saw you on the live on March 19th with that guy in the blue shirt. That will help him understand the connectivity a little better. And it's always nice to know that it's kind of come from a place of observation instead of a cold connection request, right?
Yeah. And it's great to know that people are watching this and are saying, oh, I'd like to get to know this person. Bruce the Brit does a lot of great work out there. It's great to get recognized for it.
I try. All
Yeah,
right,
you,
man.
you do
So,
try.
or
You
I'm
do.
trying, depending on, if you ask my wife, I'm pretty trying. So, but she's not here now, as you know. She said bye to you before we went live. So
Yes, she did.
she did. She's a
Yes,
good
she did.
girl. All right. Well, thanks, Thane. Again, shout out your phone number one more time, because I know you're an in-person call type of guy.
802-770-4061. 802-770-4061. I will pick up the phone. We will talk, and we will hopefully have a cup of coffee one day.
Yeah, virtual, even if it's a virtual one, right?
That's right. That's right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much for having me on, Bruce. It was great, man. I really appreciate time with you every time I have it.
All right, hang for a minute and I'll just disconnect. Thanks everybody for watching live stream.
Thanks, Gracie, for your help.
Yep, super. And I'll go back and answer or comment accordingly. And I know Thane will do the same. And we will see you as we see you. Thank you. Good night. Take care. Be safe.
Thanks.